Alrighty, so we're just going to finish notes on fingerprinting. So we have three types of fingerprints that you would find in a crime scene that you would have to figure out a way to take with you and examine later. So a patent fingerprint is like one off to the right here, where it says it's a visible print. So it's just a print that you can literally see in the house. So you're walking around and you see it. You see, like I'm going to tell, this is a double loop right there, double loop whorl. Are left on a smooth surface with either blood, ink, paint, grease, some other kind of liquid that for some reason was there, comes into contact with the hands and is then transferred to the surface. So it's not necessarily just fingerprints. It could be palm prints, footprints, toe prints, like all of those things are a possibility, but just anything that you could literally see it on a surface is like, oh, that's a print. I should take a picture of that next to a ruler. Because it's not necessarily that you always have to collect it necessarily. To get a print of it might be kind of difficult, but I take a picture of it and then I have it. If I have the size of it next to a ruler, I can put it into a system. Then plastic fingerprints are actually indentations left in some kind of soft material. I would say that this would be a little more rare because you would find it in things like clay or putty or wax. And that's kind of like, how often is that at a crime scene? But maybe be a little more common, mud. That would possibly, so you're outside and it rained. A latent fingerprint would be the kind that we're going to focus on in class because these are the ones we're actually going to have to do something to. So a latent fingerprint are caused by the transfer of oils, so just normal amount of body oils, and you leave prints around as you touch things. So these are prints that are not visible. So we have our patent and latent. So sound a lot alike. Patent is visible, so you can already see them. Take a picture of it. Latent is things that I'm going to have to dust for them. Like I'm going to have to dust surfaces to see if they come up. Or there's a lot of different types of chemicals that can make prints be visible. So for latent fingerprints, again, we're going to focus on these because these are the ones we actually have to do stuff to see them. So a latent fingerprint are not visible to the naked eye, but can be visible by using chemicals, powder, tape, that kind of stuff. To dust for fingerprints, you dust surfaces with a fine carbon powder to make a fingerprint more visible, and then tape can then be used to lift and preserve the print. So we are going to try to test that out in class. They're going to dust for prints and use tape. They are beginning to start using metal or magnetic powders that can also lift prints. Me personally, I haven't tested the magnetic powder, so I can't say much to it. I do think that I've heard there's been a lot of success with it. I only have the standard black carbon powder to test with in class. Then there are some chemicals. There's more than what I'm going to talk about. There's actually so many different fingerprinting methods that are available now, but here are some common ones. And anhydride I actually have. I'm going to need to make sure that it hasn't, went bad, it still works, because I used it last year, but I haven't had a chance to get a new one. Our budget was closed in the kind of beginning and it hasn't got here yet. So hopefully I'll get to show you this in class, but if not, I'll show you a video of it being done. So what an anhydride is, it's a chemical that bonds with the amino acids in your fingerprints and will produce a blue or purple color that is used to lift prints from surfaces such as paper or cardboard. So pretty specific. But if I was trying to get a paper, I have a letter they wrote on, a check they wrote on, I'm trying to get a print off something like that, you can spray it with an anhydride. So the object is dipped or sprayed in anhydride. You wait 24 hours and it turns this purple blue print. So you can just wait and the prints kind of come up, or if you heat it, it actually usually shows up faster. So usually what I do in class is I make some prints on some paper, I spray it with an anhydride, and I heat it over the steam of boiling water. So I boil some water on a hot plate and I hold it over that steam and it makes the print show up faster. Cyanoacrylic vapor is the other one we tend to test. Cyanoacrylic vapor is the fuming method. It's often called the superglue method because what they actually use to fume it is superglue. So pretty easy to do. This one, I was going to say you could do it at home, but you're missing the other chemical. So never mind. There's another chemical you have to use with the superglue. But the superglue method is a procedure that is used to develop latent prints on all kinds of objects. So you're seeing this Pringles can, a gun, a cup, a lot of objects it can work on. So that's why it's probably the more common one that I hear about is putting them in these fuming chambers. So household items, plastic, metal, glass, even skin, they've attempted with it. So if they thought they had, a print on their arm, they could put their arm in the fuming chamber and see if they can get the print to show up. So Heat sample in a vapor tent. So usually you're holding the vapors inside this like fuming chamber. Here's like a much nicer fuming chamber in this picture over here. It reacts with the amino acids in our fingerprints again. So same thing that the anhydride reacts with. This also reacts with the amino acids and the proteins from the oils from our fingerprints. But the appearance turns out to be this white print. Sometimes it's even kind of still hard to see. Like it's kind of clear. It's like white to clear, but it's raised. So like it lifts the print up higher. So then if you were worried that you were going to have a hard time dusting and then lifting the print, because it's actually a lot harder than it looks like to dust a print and really like lift it on the tape and it look really nice. But if you do the fuming method first, then it makes those ridges harder and stiffer and stick out more. So then when you dust for it and lift it, it's easier to take a lifted print off of it because it has the lifted ridges. And it also, once you've lifted the tape, you can usually try again. So let's say you just didn't do a good job with dusting for that fingerprint. The glue is glued to it now. So now you can do it several times without messing up the print. Whereas in real life, let's say I found some fingerprints on the doorknob and I dust it with the powder and I lift it with the tape. If I didn't do a good job, if I smudged it, if I didn't pull it off, if I powdered it too much, I brushed it too much with a brush, and I smudged the fingerprint, well, it's gone. It's gone forever. I messed it up. Fingerprint's gone. I can't use it. So that's why the cyanoacrylic vapor is really good, because then I can kind of make that print more permanent. So if I mess it up with my human error of trying to lift the print, I can get another chance. Iodine fuming. This is one that I don't test in class because I don't have a nice fume hood. I do usually let y'all test this one, the super glue method and an anhydride one. But for the iodine fuming, it's a little more dangerous to breathe, and I don't have a really good fume tent. I could put it in something like this. I haven't tried it yet, but it does the same kind of thing. And it's also good with the same thing anhydride is good for paper, cardboard, or unpainted surfaces. So in a vapor tent, heat the solid iodine crystals, and the iodine combines with the carbohydrates in your latent print. So it combines with a slightly different part of the oils left behind, and it leaves this brown print. Another reason why I don't find it to be as good as the other two is that it fades quickly. So you have to basically make the print and then take a picture really fast, because it is going to start to fade and then you're going to lose your print. So if that's all you have, then that, it's a working method, but it does fade. So it's like I'd kind of prefer the other two. Then we have the preservation of fingerprint evidence. So we want to be very, very careful. Like I just said, if you dust for prints on this beer can, like this being shown here, and you brush over it too much and you smudge the print, it's gone. I mean, the criminal's not going to come back and leave you another one. So you've just messed up your case. So the primary precaution in all cases is the prevention of adding fingerprints to evidence as well. So as you're seeing in this photo here, he's grabbing the glass in a place that normally we don't grab glasses, because basically he's trying not to smudge any prints that are there. He's trying not to add his own prints, and obviously he's wearing gloves as well. Same thing in this beer can down here. You're not going to be finding a good print on this little tab. So they're holding it just by the tab because they don't want to touch any of the surface, because there could be more fingerprints there. They could be smudging them and they could be adding their own. So investigators should wear gloves at all times and avoid handling evidence as much as possible. Touch as little as possible. Sorry, guys. And then only in areas least likely to contain identifiable latent print, such as rough surfaces. So you don't want to touch it in any place you think would be like a normal place for someone to hold that object. Only hold them in places that would be like a weird place for someone to have picked it up at. Although using a cloth to pick up exhibits prevents and leaves additional prints on the articles, the cloth will frequently wipe off or smear any prints originally present unless great care is taken. So basically, you want to pick it up just as little as possible, like touching as little as possible. Those fingerprints are actually really easy to smudge. The fundamental principles of fingerprints. So a fingerprint is an individual characteristic. I feel like we should know that because fingerprints are individual to us. No two people have identical ridge patterns. So it would be, if I'm saying class or individual evidence, it is individual. A fingerprint pattern remains unchanged during a person's lifetime. So the print that you have when you were a baby is the same print you got now. However, a print may change due to permanent scars or skin diseases. So if you get like a terrible scar through this one finger and it just never heals over, then that will be your new print, having that scar through it. So that could happen. Criminals have sought to alter their fingerprints with chemicals, surgery, superficial destruction. Most attempts at fingerprint alteration have not been successful. Fingerprints dissolved by acid will grow back. Scars on fingers make prints even more unique. So if you give yourself a bunch of scars and then you continue making crimes, as soon as we figure out that the prints being left behind have lots of scars in them, and then we, for whatever reason, get that person arrested and see that they have a bunch of scars on their fingers, it's like, oh, dead giveaway. So it really makes you even that much more likely to be suspicious, or that much more likely to be unique if you're going to have like odd fingerprints like that. And your fingerprints, again, remember they were made in the basal layer. So it's not your epidermis. It's actually pretty deep down that your fingerprints are made. So if you just like went over it with, like they said, acid, like trying to dissolve the top, they do grow back because your basal layer is still under there. So as soon as the skin finally heals, you'll still have your fingerprints. In 1999, the FBI developed the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, or AFIS. You don't have to say all that. So kind of in every unit, you're going to start to notice has its own database. We talked about one in our last unit with question documents, talked about one in this unit. So there's always like some main database where all the like top priority cases have their evidence held. The fingerprint database is called AFIS, which provides digital automated fingerprint searches for latent searches, electronic storage of fingerprint photo files, and the electronic exchange of fingerprints and test results. So it's just our biggest database controlled by the FBI for fingerprints. AFIS isn't just used for criminal checks. It also collects fingerprints for employment, licenses, social service programs such as homeless shelters. Even me as a teacher, I had my background check and have all my fingerprints done. So it's not just criminals who have their fingerprints done. There's so many different types of jobs that require you to have a background check, so require you to have your fingerprints in the system. When all of these uses are taken together, about 1 out of every 6 people in this country have their fingerprint record in AFIS, which means, yes, leaves a lot of people not in AFIS, but a lot of us end up being in it. New scanning technology and digital systems of identifying patterns have helped to increase the processing time and clarity of fingerprints. Fingerprints can now be scanned at the rate of 500 to 1,000 dots per inch. So that just means the computer scans to a pretty high level. Whereas before, like it would give you like a lot of matches and you'd have to sort through them yourself, like eyeball, like trying to match the fingerprints. And now it gives you much less matches, like, and say like down to just a couple. So this provides an image that reveals like little pore patterns on the fingerprint ridges, allowing for even better pattern matching. Just saying that our machines are getting better and better at matching them with us not even really doing anything, just putting the fingerprint in the system. Technologies are currently being developed to use other physical features to identify people as well. So including our eyes, our facial patterns, the patterns of veins in the back of our hand and creases of our palms. All of that stuff is actually pretty unique to us. The U.S. Marines takes retinal scans and fingerprints of Iraqi residents for their required biometric cards. So kind of like normal, the military is usually the one that tests new security features out before it becomes mainstream. So probably irises are coming in the future as being a very common method of identification instead of fingerprinting. But I would say for like crime scene sakes, it's not like people just run around throwing their eyeballs out at crime scenes, whereas fingerprints just naturally get left behind because we're touching things with our hands. So even though that's cool and it could become a great security measure using the iris, because it's even takes only 2 seconds to scan the iris and look for patterns, and they're already being used in some prisons, airports, and they have 200 different unique identifying characteristics, about 6 times more than fingerprints. Basically what it's saying is they're more unique than fingerprints. So it's even better than fingerprints in identifying a person, but not at a crime scene because we don't leave our irises around. And here we go. Last little practice to look at. Go back. So you remember you have the 12 match guideline. You have to find at least 12 matching points. If you don't find 12, then we can't say it's an actual match in court. You could say it had so many matches, but you can't say like for sure this is the person unless you have 12 matches. So just kind of seeing exactly those same points, finding those exact same points in the print. And as you can tell, I mean, this print is very blurry. I mean, I probably can't find 12 matches. And that would be pretty common because you're not going to lift a perfect print. Sadly, if you're virtual, you're not going to get to see that being done in front of you. I'm going to have y'all do like video type stuff, seeing people lift prints. But in class, like what the students will really find is that it's really hard to get a perfect print. To actually like dust for a print and lift it up and it actually look all beautiful like this, like very hard to do. So most of the time in a crime scene, you're going to be getting a partial print. It's not going to be like fully lifted off. It's not going to look super clear. And all you can do is the best you can at matching what you can. And you may not be able to get to that 12 match guideline. And that doesn't mean that it's not the person, the person you're trying to match it to. It just means that you can't completely prove it with your fingerprint. So they'll have to just say that in court, like I'm 50% sure, I'm 60% sure that this is a match. Anyways, that is the end of notes. We will be practicing this week those kind of things like patent, plastic, latent prints, and then how to actually lift those latent prints.